Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here, and get ready for Gnosis. Well, I've ran into some very fascinating information which I've mentioned in passing in other videos, but the ultimate spy versus spy. The remote viewer, the number one remote viewer against a very powerful psychic. Who wins? Spy versus spy. Well, it's very, very fascinating to see this documented. Now, Reader's Digest apparently made a series of documentaries, which I was unaware of until recently, about 15, 20 years ago. I'm not sure when this was exactly produced, but the link to the actual video will be underneath this video. Very, very important to listen, to watch that video. All the information is given to you in the first 40 minutes. You don't have to watch the entire video, even though I did find all the information in there fascinating. But what they did is they took this psychic and Joe McGonigal, number one remote viewer, oh, great military guy, little troll that he is, who babbles all the time of how great he is. And I've seen him tested several times, and the results were all pretty mediocre. But he was on Nightline, where he was tested many years ago, and I thought the results were kind of mediocre at best. But let's go through something that is a little better than that kind of forced reality of the Nightline show. I'm not even sure they're still on, but it was a big show at that time 20 years ago. But here we have is a very documented test of remote viewing by the number one remote viewer. Matter of fact, he has number one as his designation from the military in the program, and claims to have had great success. Of course, it's the same old story with him and all the other remote viewers. It's just really the government policy that they put out. And they talk about, I drove a submarine 30 years ago. It's the same old story. They all got the same stories. They tell you nothing new because they're all basically under secrecy agreements. They can't talk about anything. They can't do anything. So the point is, the information that you're getting is pathetically bad. But proof is in the pudding. You don't have to go out and tell people how great things are. There are also machines they use and other things they don't talk about in these other things. So, but you'll never hear about any of that stuff because that's all kept in their secrecy codes. So you get whatever trash they want to throw out to you as government disinformation. And they're using the entire remote viewing program as a way to stimulate training of people out there. And almost everybody in their program has written a book or is running a course, and they're making a fortune off of it as their payoff for doing this. So they can find talented people without the government spending money. So it only goes into their pocket for their criminal needs. Certainly not going to pay people and bring them in and train them. They want somebody else to do that. They want you to pay for it. Make sure you take a remote viewing course for $1,000, and if you're good at it, well, they'll approach you because they own all the teachers. But getting back to that, well, everything in life is the same thing. I mean, it's not complicated. Life is about manifesting, and that means if you say you can do something, if you're the greatest fighter, well, let's see you fight. If you're the greatest healer, let's see you heal. I mean, this is how everything works in life. Now, things become a little bit gray here when things have to be done by individuals who have different capacities. And I've talked about this before, but you need to understand that as part of somebody's success or failures rate. That, not everything is click, click, click. It's not a machine. If it's going through your consciousness, it's not a machine. But if you have a machine, let's say a washing machine, well, doesn't it wash your clothes 100% of the time? Well, just about. I mean, sometimes my washing machine acts up and I get a load or two for one reason or another that wasn't done right. But it's pretty rare. Maybe 1 out of 1,000 washes. So you have a scientific fact there that everybody gets a washing machine, gets the same results from it, basically. Now, there are variances. Are you using the correct detergents? How are you operating it? What settings are you putting it on? So there's even a variance with a machine that does the same thing for everybody, but you use it differently. So we need to understand it. But in the end, washing machines wash your clothes. So if in the end remote viewing is so great, and they like to change the wording. It's not psychic power. It's remote viewing. After all, we're military. We don't want to have mysticism. Yeah, I don't like the military mysticism of them never winning a war. So the whole idea is that we're giving this to the worst group of people on the planet, which is basically the military, who is nothing but controlled dogma. And what's interesting is this controlled dogma that has had times and still does where, when it comes to your own butt, whether you're going to dodge a bullet or come back alive, well, you listen to people. And if they tell you that spitting in the wind while farting is going to stop a bullet from hitting you, you're going to try that. Because what do you got to lose? So interestingly enough, the military tends to go in these areas, and there's always been a large research, mostly done by people that don't want to, that never get any publicity, the Navy, into so many of these different things. So, surprisingly so, and it's been going on since the actually 30s into heavily in the 40s and past. And there's lots of records of this, lots of military documents stating their activities, stating their contact with UFOs and everything else. Military documents gotten from the military, not Joe Blow, not the idiot cop on the beat, not any of this stuff that sees lights in the sky. Not abduction victims. We're talking about government reports from the governmental security agencies, from the CIA, NSA, etc. These have been gotten through the Freedom of Information, proving that there are extraterrestrials. That just again. So the point is that there's all these other papers too. But basically, remote viewing is nothing more than a psychic technique. It has nothing to do with anything else. It is psychic functioning. You could call it occult functioning. Consciousness functioning, higher level. It has nothing to do with remote viewing, which is an interesting term. But what they're doing is they try and sanitize it because of the negativity that their power structures created against psychic and occult and everything else. Well, everything today is based on occult principles. The string theory of quantum physics is nothing more than the vibrational understanding of life, which comes from occult. Quantum physics is nothing more than them explaining all the occult belief systems that have been in ancient mystery schools and going on for thousands of years. It's amazing how long it took them to catch up, and now they prove the existence of it. So it's quite fascinating. So what they did is go in there and try and sanitize that using their words, and of course going to the most stupidest people and most closed-minded boobs on the planet, which is the military, who's basically achieved absolutely nothing. And made horrible mistakes and have failed on so many occasions it isn't even funny. So, this happened to be by a few people, General Stubblebine, who was an honest and apparently good man from the interviews I've seen, who was open to anything that would be effective and had that kind of thinking. So for a guy stuck in a military machine in a very tiny little box, he was a very enlightened person. And towards the end of his life, he kind of got it all, which I found very interesting. So like everything, there's good people in everywhere, and his intentions are good. He wanted to protect his country, Stubblebine, and saw, through his own words, parades as a child and said, gee, these are guys doing something. I want to be one of them. And I had those thoughts as a young child as well, thinking, well, you're fighting for the good guys for your country. There are no good guys, but there are levels of good guys maybe, but at this particular time in our existence, everybody is dirty. So as you move in there, that's what they've tried to do here. And they've come up with this stuff. They brought in different people to teach them. Basically, the entire remote viewing didn't come from the military. It came from Russell Targ and Barry Taft and all the people who were working on this, who put together information which then the CIA synergistically put together and then kind of claimed it as its own. They brought in Ingo Swann, who was at the time a kind of famous psychic. All the connections to these things are, they're really not important how he got involved, etc. But he was a civilian who was brought in because he was psychically talented and had some abilities. But the bottom line is that he didn't invent or put together the remote viewing either. It was done by many people, which was compiled. Seems a lot of it came from SRI and Russell Targ and Puthoff, who were doing this research and put things together in writing. And part of that process was Ingo Swann as well. And of course, the government grabbed it and said it's theirs, blah, 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 blah. So there became some sort of procedure. Now, none of these people have any kind of psychic or metaphysical background, so they're doing this from a very scientific, straightforward way, which in a lot of ways has very little value. I mean, they don't seem to have consulted. I guess you could say Ingo Swann was one of those, but it seems to me a lack of being involved with psychic people because they feel that these people were not good enough. They're the outsiders, the weirdos, and everything else. Like government is so normal, and particularly the military with all the nut jobs, psycho murderers, and losers in the military. So as we see all this stuff, we have to understand the reality of what's going on. So they wanted to change that to make it, because they didn't want to call it psychic viewing or clairvoyance or whatever thing else, which has been going on for years and years. Which psychics have been doing. What's a psychic? A psychic is feeling an object and getting vibrations off of it that they then translate into real data, which has been done for years. That's one method. Or just psychic readings. You can do psychic readings in so many different ways. You can use tarot cards. You can use runes. Or you can just get the feelings from an object or a person. You don't necessarily have to have an object. To get information which is staggeringly accurate. So, well, that wasn't good enough for Joe military. We got to bring our own boobs in, Ed Dames, who thinks that the aliens are going to wipe out the year. Every year, same thing. The guy's a screaming lunatic. And here's an officer in the Army. And the list can go on and on and on of all these guys that were brought in, who all are, kind of a bunch of jerks. So, but they're military. Hey, stand in the corner and pee on yourself. Yes, sir. What result do you want, sir? So this is the kind of nonsense that these people are brought in. To think that this would produce great results is a fraud. And I don't believe on anything that the remote viewing military people state. They are hired liars kept under strong contracts that if they talk, their life is ruined. That they could be imprisoned, fined, both, or, well, not too hard to disappear, is it? Got a heart attack all of a sudden? Yeah. These are all the things that can happen very easily in all these things. So putting those kind of people in something to have them particularly work something out in this, and then, of course, having everybody else that had any knowledge of this laugh at them because of what it was, certainly wasn't something that got a very good quality of people in there. He claims to, Joseph Monteagle claimed to have a near-death experience. He almost died from a heart attack, etc. It's the same old story. So they're having that. They're having all these things. The usual stories, and what are they doing? What did they come up with? He had claimed to have remote viewed a Russian-built submarine and wrote down or drew drawings of it exactly when we didn't really know what was going on there. Yada, yada, yada. Well, how true all that is, I don't really know. It's a good cover story, and it's the same story you'll hear from him that is 40 years old over and over and over. Nothing new. They talked to the Russians who had some, and they spilt their guts, the secrets about that, over to their adversaries. All this stuff is such a comic book creation by their produced CIA things to make this image, to create this whole interest in something, to train the public so they can find talented psychic people where they can use and abuse under the guise of waving the American flag over them. Who doesn't want to help their country? Who doesn't want to say that you're one of our psychic spies? Who doesn't want that? So they easily get people to do that, and there was times where I would have fallen into that myself. And I think any person who is a positive person who believes they live in a free country, and of course, 20, 30 years ago, this is how people commonly thought, particularly 40, 50 years ago. Now we all understand the cesspool of corruption the world is and how horrific a lying, really evil military we have. So, But basically, what are we talking about here? We're talking about psychic functioning, clairvoyance, seeing the future, seeing someplace. There's a lot of terms you can use for it to define it because remote viewing deals with a lot of things. So they went ahead and called it remote viewing to make it palatable for all those people out there. So what's the bottom line again? Well, how correct are you? And other than their contrived stories, which we cannot verify because they're basically just that, contrived stories, they've been cleansed, they've been scrubbed up clean to bring to the public after being reviewed by an entire military board of people that say what you can write, what you can say, and what you can't because you have a lifetime secrecy contract. You can't talk. This is what happens with all the astronauts. This isn't for a few years. This is for the rest of your life. Very interesting. And it's also very interesting that as people get older in life and so forth, that things happen to them. And everybody thinks that, someone starts to be... have thoughts about releasing information and they immediately kill you. Well, it really doesn't work like that. They discredit you and then they take care of you later, similar to what the police departments do to get rid of people from their gang members, that they wait 20 years with their assassination teams to kill people like Rodney King, O.J. Simpson, who was set up, and other people, which I have firsthand knowledge of. So, and they track people for 20, 30 years and get them into car accidents. Ultimately, they murdered them. This is how they work. So you got to understand what's going on in the bigger picture. This is not straightforward. And if you want to wave the flag and say that we're good guys only, well, I'm afraid that those days have gone. So, his history, he's just an average guy. He was U.S. Army. This is Joseph McGonigal, Eagle, that's how you guess you pronounce it. He only got up to a chief warrant officer because he was not in the officers program, and he wasn't able to get into the officers because they loved him so much. He is 74 years of age right now. He was involved in a lot of these programs, the Stargate. He got the Legion of Merit for his military service, so they did reward him. He did a lot of work other than this in his military career. He joined the military at the age of 18 because he was living in a really terrible environment, so he claims, and a very violent area of, I think he grew up in, what does it show here? Yeah, in Florida, in the Miami area. And apparently there was very dangerous with gangs and everything else there. So he was able to jump over. And all these details I think are important here. And this is an important subject, so I'm going to take some time with it. He also grew up in an alcoholic family with a lot of abuse, a lot of dangers in childhood, as I mentioned, and apparently grew up basically in poverty. And started to develop some of these skills supposedly to survive. And I've known a lot of people who have developed psychic abilities, used magic, etc., so they could survive. Gangs were going to kill them. Other people, they protected themselves. I've had several cases of that as well. So what do you do, of course, when you have very little alternatives? I mean, how many people in the military are really there by choice? What do I do? I got no education. I got no money. Well, they join the military, and this is very typical. Of a lot of people in the military, if not the majority of them. So he put his 20 years in the military, got his military retirement, like a lot of these guys do, and what basically they're called double dippers. So they're on the government payroll, by the way. That's important to understand. He is getting retirement benefits that could be cut at any time if he says something they don't want them to. So, very, very interesting. So he was served all over the world and everything else as usual. Was in the signals intelligence area, and got the Legion of Merit for his last 10 years of service, which included 5 years of the remote viewing program. So I guess it was a general. I'm not sure what the Legion of Merit is, and I don't think we're going to go into that. So he was considered to be a good soldier, not a person who was a problem, had mental problems, etc. As people may want to say, well, all these guys are nuts. Well, he spent 20 years in the military and basically retired with an honorable discharge and a few pats on the back. Part of that was getting involved with the remote viewing program. And again, I'm not going to go into the details there. He has written a book. You can go out and get his book and read about the details, and his talks about his life, etc. I've given you the basic details. So on and on, and from there, of course, he's been working with the remote, the Monroe Institute, which I believe he's actually even running right now, or working in some very high capacity there. Monroe, of course, has been dead for many years, but the Institute is still functioning. He did also have his own business, and I don't quite understand why these businesses don't make a fortune doing RV for other people. Why not do RV for yourself? Why not make money from the stock market, lotteries, etc.? This is the problem I have with anybody who wants to sell their services. Now, there's a bigger picture there that, well, you're not a stockbroker, so you can't empower stocks to make a lot of money. So you have a stockbroker pay you to give him information, and you make your money that way. So this is one of the things that you have to understand, the bigger field of some people have the channels for things to coming to you, and most likely a retired military guy isn't going to be having that. So I don't want to particularly go into what he's done or not done. I've covered all that. I mean, if you want independent details like that, you can certainly get that. But I don't think any of that really matters. It's just their opinion, what's going on. Do you find that interesting? That's up to you, and there's lots of information. Go online and do all that other stuff. So let's get down to the meat of things and this very well documented Reader's Digest special on him going head to head with a talented psychic. And what were the results of that? Well, it's very, very interesting, because here we've got very straightforward, documentable evidence that was then traced. So the psychic would give her impressions of this, and this had to do with the disappearance of a particular child. Okay? So this was a young girl who disappeared. And they gave it to the psychic, and they gave it to Joe number 1. Military genius. Hey. So we had these two things there, and so very, very important. Everybody needs to watch this, especially if you're into remote viewing, psychic, and of course, psychic empowerment, which is a big part of success tech and what we train people for. We train the real stuff that works, not the fantasy stuff produced by government agencies trying to bring people in to use and abuse them. So the whole idea is that on all these things that are every time I've seen, McGonagall's been on several different shows and put out some pretty poor performances. He also wrote a book on the future, predictions for the new millennium, which is all wrong. Nothing ever happened. I mean, it just, the compiling of evidence against this guy's capacities and abilities when he was rated by his colleagues and even by Russell Targ as one of the best remote viewers ever. Wow. That's why I have problems with all these people. And the problem with Russell Targ and SRI is that they have to come up with positive results if they want to refill their credit card. So if they come back and say, well, the results are interesting, we need a lot more time to study it, there's still a lot of work to be done, click. No ticky, no washy. You get no money, Russell. No, it's great. This guy doesn't. There's a problem here, and this is the corruption factor that is intrinsic within this society. On every level, nobody wants to solve any problems because it means they're out of a job. Simple as that. And it's not fun being unemployed. You don't eat. You don't take care of your family. You don't have a house. You don't have a car. I mean, it's not funny. So I understand the compelling factors here, but this causes a deep level of corruption. So here he is, and they're going into details. I love these kind of things. This was very well done by an industry that's usually known for its incompetency, which is the media. But here we had it. They're trying to find this child. They were both given the same information, the same psychic links. And what happened? Well, you couldn't do a worse job than old Joe Boy did. Joe number one. He stated the child was alive. She was dead. He stated the car that was taken away was blue. I believe it was green. I don't remember the details here without going back there, but he got that wrong. He got every possible clue or information that he came up with was wrong. 100% verifiable wrong. What did the psychic do? Well, we know these psychics are incompetent boobs, aren't they? They believe in fairies, and they don't do it. They're holding crystals thinking the world is changing. Right? That's what the military will tell you, especially those selling these $1,000 courses from these military schools of incompetency. She got everything 100% provable right. 100% provable right by the psychic. What system do you want to train in? The military system, 100% wrong? Or the psychic system, 100% right? That's the facts, people. Watch this special, follow the link below, and educate yourself on what's going on. I've been talking about the fraud of remote viewing for years. I do find it interesting. I do find their technique something that a psychic-based training can benefit from with a certain amount of structure. The people involved with it are government stooges that have done nothing and continue to perpetrate that, hooked up with a lot of stooges in the regular world like SRI that has a lot of questionable research they've done and hasn't been able to prove anything for a few reasons. One of it is they're tied unto secrecy. They couldn't come out with films of Uri Geller because they were not allowed to release the film showing that Uri Geller was 100% accurate and did all the things he stated he did. And they didn't bother to have the courage to even come out and state it because they're under all these government secrecy contracts. And secondly, they want their credit card charged up again. If they have problems or get the intelligence community that was funding them angry at them, well, that means that there's no money coming. So all of this means that their credibility is in question again. It gets back to the same old story. They're worried about their jobs. So we can never believe anybody because none of them, except myself and Success Tech, is not corrupted. Plain and simple. I'm an outsider and persecuted. So that's the only people you're going to get any kind of good information from. So to give credit to these people who they're all the books, or at least 90% of the books on remote viewing, and particularly it was all of them not too many years ago, now more people are writing about it, were all done by these government-controlled agents. And then they birth more government-controlled people. And they use these people and contact them anytime they show they have some natural abilities. Lynn Buchanan's #1 student, who now is teaching other people because she's so good at it, Lori Williams, Buchanan approached her and said, "Gee, I got government work for you." Oh, what a surprise, Lynn. What a surprise, Lynn. Why you have a girl's name, I don't know, but hey, that's military. So a lot of girly stuff goes on in the military. But the point is that isn't that interesting? There's a guy who's been retired for 30... Retired? I don't know if you're ever retired. You may be retarded, but you're never retired from the intelligence community or the military, especially when you've signed documents stating that I don't talk to nobody. I work for you. I find people for you. She stated this, Lori Williams. You can find out for yourself. I don't state anything here that can't be checked out. And I never do. I get the sources from other people and then figure out what the truth is from that. But certainly these are stated. Lori stated that she was asked to work for the government by Lynn Buchanan, who she trained under. Oh, you make stuff up? That's not out of my mouth. So he's directly connected to the military intelligence community who is still working with them, like all the other ones that are these, quote, ex-military. X marks the spot. I don't know about anything X spot. It just marks the spot of where the spooks are. So we know this for 100% true. There's also been other people, and we don't know how true other sources are, but here it comes from the horse's mouth. But other people said they went to psychic fairs, and there were intelligent people there masquerading as research institutes and churches and organizations. They filled out forms, and when they tested them psychically a little bit, the next thing they ended up was working in some military base somewhere that they were asked to do this work. So this is what the CIA is doing underground to find people. And why not? It's a great way to sucker people and not spend any money. Of course, they take the money that they get, the billions of dollars that they have in their budget, and put it in their personal pockets. They're certainly not going to pay, and I've known people who claim to work for the government on different areas, and they get nothing from it. The government doesn't protect them. The government doesn't do anything. They get nothing from it. They volunteered as dumb suckers while they pour billions of dollars in their own pockets through criminal activities, and they hire, oh, you do it for your country, aren't you happy? You can work for free. Oh, yeah? Do you work for free? You got to remember that we don't have a military. We have a job. This is a volunteer military. The military is paid a salary. This is not a service. You're in the service. You're working for, you're not. They're not volunteering their time. They're getting paid. And quite well for what they do. So, all of this is part of the situation that goes on. But we have here documented 100% in living color out of the mouth of both of these people. And there's no way you can cut this. I don't have any use for the media. They're, God, what's wrong with these people that they distort everything? And for what particular purpose is almost bizarre. And I've had it happen to me. I spent 12 hours with the BBC that they cut down to 3 minutes and made me look like an idiot. And I will be talking about that in another audio soon, too. But the point is that all of this, but here it is, you can't really cut this to make it look good or bad unless you're putting in other things. So right out of McGon Eagle's mouth, he said, blue car, when it was green. He said, she's alive when she's dead. So I don't know how you would do that unless you're going to go in there and make him do that somehow, or fake it entirely, meaning you put that in there. But I don't see how that would be, and I don't know how you could possibly get away with that would come out. So, she said, the psychic, she's dead. The car is green. So, all of these things she pinpointed. There are 8 or 10 things here, and as I said, getting into the minutiae, this is not important. See it from see it coming from the horse's mouth. Don't believe me. Watch the special. It's going to be the best 30 minutes of your time you've ever looked to get proof of what's going on. And that's important that we have verifiable evidence of all these things. I don't want to spend my time investigating a system where they claim they're doing so great when they don't. They're liars. And they're paid to be liars, and they're forced to be liars. So you got to be very careful when you investigate remote viewing by the entire industry, and it's a big industry of remote viewing of that kind of beef. Where's the beef? There is no beef. Their success rate is barely above 50%, which is guess. That's the reality of it. Oh, we're up to 78. Nonsense. McGon Eagle came out in his latest interview on Mishlove stating that, well, it's 60%. 60%? That's horrific. That's only a little above guessing. That's no use. When he was been stating for years how great it was. Well, now he's getting caught, and he's been documented on Nightline failing horribly. he's been in this show, I've never seen a worse failure because we had pinpoints. Instead of saying, well, we're going over this, and he draws little drawings that can be interpreted 50 ways. Yeah, well, it's really, it looks like a bridge, doesn't it? Well, not really. Kinda. And when we get into documented information, what color's the car? Is someone alive? Who did it? Did they know them? Did they not? We have 100% proof that he got it 100% wrong. Do you understand how that is? And this is when he was much younger and more physically fit than the typical army fat guy he is now. And of course, he's running the Moreau Institute now, finding more suckers that he can bring into the military-industrial complex to use against his own people. What did the psychic do? 100% right. So I know where my money's on. I know what books and courses and things I'm going to study. I'm going to study the stuff that's been proven to work, not the contrived fantasy that is perpetrated by the military-industrial complex called remote viewing. Wake up, people. Know what's going on out there. This is critically important if you're a serious investigator into manifesting technologies. I want to know what works. And if it works from these people, I'm the first one in line to be using it. And I'm not sold in my systems. I'm not sold in my products. I produce these because I know they work. And I've done the research while the other stuff doesn't. Because I've done the research, just like I'm telling you about now. But I'm the first one to drop anything that I've ever used if there's something better. Because I am seeking facts and wisdom. I don't care. I'm about manifesting. If I find something that manifests better, I'm there. Because I'm looking at results, not trying to sell a product. But we're not going to get that. And remember, there was another guy who was very mistrusted and they had super problems with, who was an astronaut, who later in life, they were very unsure if he would start babbling because he was so old. Because that's when people start doing it, of course. You have little to lose. Your family's going, you're going to die in a few years. Who cares? So most people want to come clean. His name was Neil Armstrong. I think everybody's heard of Neil Armstrong, the first man set foot on the moon, and then had a horrible mental breakdown after he came back and everything else. So, and he had talked to people privately of what he had seen and what he'd done, but never came out publicly. He was an unsure commodity. Guess what? He went into the hospital and they botched his operation. Well, of course, you got to remember that all doctors are all controlled for this reason. What's the easiest way to kill somebody? Well, in the hospital. Happened to my relatives. And many others. That's how they do it, people. You don't shoot somebody in the head outside, or you'll get into a car accident. Even that is suspicious, but it's just a medical thing. Well, people die. That happens. Well, they found out and paid the family, which probably is bought off as well. Well, they found out that this was a medical error, a strange one that shouldn't have happened at all, and they paid the family $6 million because of that. And this is documented in the media again. This is how it works. So you've got to understand what's happening in these entire areas out there and how things work so you can understand what is truth, what is not. If you don't understand the game that's been playing and you just take everything at face value and the media is there to help you, they're not controlled. Why would they not be controlled? I don't get that. What kind of thinking is that? Somebody is good because he's in the military and he's doing the right thing. What world are you living in? And what is all this information? And why is everybody in remote viewing a military contact or the people who started the program, like Russell Targ and SRI? Well, the point is SRI is a government-funded institution. We can't really trust anything they tell us. We certainly can't trust their agents, direct military people that claim to have done things or under secrecy contracts, to give us any information of any validity or to think that they are in any way X. Yeah, X marks the spot of the spook. It's very important that everybody understands this. But the bottom line here is that it's 100% error on the remote viewers, and the psychic was 100% right. Well, that's the kind of facts I look for. That's the kind of things to point you in the right direction. So don't get caught up in the falsehoods of corrupt, evil agencies taking over profound consciousness empowerments like so many that are out there, from healing to psychic empowerments. These profound consciousness empowerments are not going to come from corrupt, evil systems. Learn it, do it, be it. Until next time.